that's an indication that everybody else is ready.
That was not me. Just FYI. I haven't started recording. So tell me when you're ready and I'll start recording.
Wasn't you?
No, it was Ted.
Oh, Sue? Ready to do that. Oh, Ted. Well, Catherine says she's a little delayed again.
She said she's on her way.
Yeah,
I was gonna answer her and say, me too, but then.
Yeah.
I ran, the horses were in the roads.
yeah. Oh, Well, I think we should get started.
Yeah.
It's time. So we'll call the meeting to order. The second regular meeting, no, it's the first regular meeting of the town board for the month of August.
I hope so. since
Early,
August 1st.
as early in the month as it could possibly be. There she comes. Just call the meeting to order.
Yeah.
Are there additions or deletions to the agenda? Privilege of the floor. Is there anyone here or there in Zoom land who'd like to address the board on any matter? Ed?
Thank you. There are two items on the agenda that seem to be deserving of a comment. The first one that I'll start with is the resolution about changing the year of local elections, a letter to Governor Hochul. And I read the proposed resolution, and it seems completely reasonable. It gives absolutely believable reasons for not making the change. What I wonder, though, is why, given these obvious reasons, both the state Senate and Assembly passed the rule. So I'm curious, and I hope that the town board will talk about reasons that they voted it in. In other words, this isn't completely one-sided. They must have something in mind, and I would just love to know, and I'm sure the public would as well, why it was passed in the first place, and of course that you will consider those reasons when deciding about this resolution. And speaking of local elections, you've now had a couple of weeks to think about the presentations that were made, or the interviews that were made by the two candidates for the town board. I'm sure that I echo the feelings of a lot of people that they both presented very well and both presented as very reasonable people. And once again, I am very interested to hear their pluses and minuses and the reasons for whatever decision you may discussed in public. And I certainly hope that you all came into this with an open mind, and that you haven't, in fact, had discussions with other board members during those 2 weeks about the subject. That, in fact, we'll hear the total reasoning for whatever decision you make right out here in public, which is, of course, the purpose of making this choice in public. Other than that, thank you. It's been a beautiful day today, and I'm hoping, I'm hoping there'll be many more like it.
But change what we had recently. Anyone else? Oh, yes, Gary.
I know the budget, the budget review is going to be coming up pretty soon. When would be a good time for somebody to ask questions about certain line items?
Well, depending on which line items they are. It could either be early on in the process before, departments weigh in, or it could be as we go through the budget, when it's the relevant section, as you wish. Kind of a judgment call as to what's the better time to make comments.
Because there's quite a few I have questions on about certain things in the, that compared to last year's budget, in the last 2 years prior to that, that I have some questions on. I just didn't know when would be a good time.
Well, I mean, some of those questions you might be able to get answered, outside of a meeting.
We could ask now. I mean,
What is?
Laura's getting ready to send out packets, right? In the
Right.
next week or two?
Right.
But
But Laura's not here right now,
No, she's not.
so it'd probably be helpful if she was here to help answer questions.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that.
So we're not answering questions, but
Right.
what's the topic?
right. Do you want to mention what those line items are, Gary?
Well, there's quite a few of them. For instance, let's see here. We have one in there for the last year was for traffic control for $5,000. What's that for? We haven't used it.
Oh, this is.
I mean,
Yeah,
go
that
ahead.
kind of specific questions are, I think, best directed to Laura
Yeah,
or me or
Okay.
both. So they, rather than spending, I don't think it's a productive use of board time to be, doing it. Unless in the course of doing it, we identify issues that ought to be discussed as part of the budget process, which could happen.
I mean, there were some other ones, for instance, the Danby Pond. I've been over there a few times and there's no lifeguard. There's
Okay.
nobody there except goose, and there's goose crap all over the place. So nobody uses it for swimming. Why even have that line item in there and keep taxing the taxpayers for stuff we don't use? I mean, that's just going back into the general fund, correct?
Correct, because, well, most of it is, we were hoping we could get a lifeguard. We had some leads on lifeguards. Consequently, we did all the other stuff that was needed in terms of permits from the health department. Got the contract with the state. So all the pieces were in place. But in the end, we didn't get a lifeguard. So it turned into a picnic area basically for the summer. Observation point for the pond. As part of the budget process, we could consider whether we want to continue the process or not. Although I will say Mary Ann has somebody lined up for next year to be a lifeguard.
oh,
Good.
He couldn't serve this year because he's not old enough to be the lifeguard. He will be
But-
next year.
There'd have to be a lot of cleanup to that pond, the way it is right now.
Yeah.
I mean, the seaweeds over there is horrible. There used to have a wide beach area that Amy Cusimano used to take care of, and that's all overgrown. And even the picnic area and the grass is just full of goose crap. I mean, you're not gonna have kids running around playing, but that's just one thing. I mean, there were other things why, we keep putting this stuff in the budget, and there's 3 or 4 or 5 items that at $3,000 or $5,000 that we keep taxing the taxpayer every year, but we haven't used in the last 3 years. So why can't we set that aside in the general fund? And
When we don't use them, that's exactly what happens.
well, why can't we set it aside in the general fund for a specific, for just a quick, for instance, fortunately, we haven't had to use the court bailiff at all this year. We haven't had any bench trials or jury trials. So if we don't use that for the year, I think that's $4,000. Why can't that be set aside either in the court fund or the general fund and not turn around and charge it to the taxpayers again next year? Have it set aside in the general fund.
Well,
For that purpose.
That's essentially what happens when we appropriate part of the fund balance. And in the budget process, we decide of the money that's left over at the end of the year, plus what's left over from previous years, what part of that do we want to use in the next budget instead of raising it all through taxes? And every year we use some amount. It was actually 45,000, something like that. Gets appropriated from that fund balance and applied to the budget so that we don't have to raise it all in taxes. So we don't raise it all in taxes. Some of the savings get used, and unexpended funds are among them. So that's how they get generated, and that's how they're also used.
Like I said, there were quite a few others that I had, but I can bring those up, when you guys start discussing the actual budget and, see where we want to go from there.
Right.
Thanks, Ken.
Teresa, do you want to comment too? Hang up, hand up. There you go.
Hi. I'm interested, where can I find this resolution urging the governor to veto the changing from odd to even numbers? This is the first I've heard of it.
It should be linked to the agenda. I'm pretty sure that Cindy linked it. That's-
Was linked to the agenda.
Yeah,
It is?
yeah.
Yeah.
If you click the link.
Okay. Because it's
I'll
not
give you-
underlined on my
I'll give you
copy.
background on this. This was a resolution that was passed by the county legislature in a similar form, and it was brought to the Tompkins County Council of Governments. Well, it should have been brought to, but the transmittal failed, and so it ended up being brought up at the meeting, and there wasn't enough time to consider it. So what we said we would do instead was to ask the individual towns to consider adding their vote in support of it if they wished, rather because it didn't feel appropriate to deal with it on the spot there. So that's why it's on the agenda here.
So I don't know, do you know the answer to this? If in fact this went through, does that mean, for instance, my term is a 4-year term, would it be reduced to a 3-year term or extended to a 5-year term?
I don't think,
Hmm.
well, I mean, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
Because it would, well, no, interesting question. You know, if you're going to switch to even years so that it can coincide with the state and federal elections instead of being in the odd years as it is now, there would have to be some sort of accommodation to adjust the terms of office
Yeah.
as well. Either it would shorten them and we have to run again, or it would lengthen them.
Right, and so
I'm
that's,
not
I mean,
sure-
that's my
I'm not
question.
sure what's in, I'm
They
not sure
probably
what's in that
shouldn't.
state enabling legislation because they did pass it and it's awaiting the governor's signature or veto.
Okay, and just quick, I missed the last meeting where you were talking about the seniors and them going over budget on their budget. And again, kind of like what Gary was saying, I still really don't understand, since they hadn't used, a total of $10,000 in 2 previous years, that you're like having an issue over a couple of $100 that we've gone over. When it comes time for the budget review,
Which is
I think
shortly.
I would, the seniors had asked if I would sit in on the budget. I don't believe that Dan is going to be the treasurer any longer. And so they're kind of just floundering around right now, trying to figure out how they're going to manage this. So, I just wanted to put that out there. I'm sorry that I missed what the issue was at the last meeting.
But we
wasn't
did
an
deal with
issue.
it at the last meeting and what we ended up doing was transferring money from
Yeah.
the pond,
Yeah.
which is we ended up not having the lifeguard this year, to cover the overdraft basically on part of the seniors.
Yeah.
And what should happen is that they should, when we do the budget process here, when we're asking each department and others who'd like money from the town, put in the budget what you want next
Right.
year.
Right,
So that it's in the budget.
Yeah.
Because,
Okay.
if it exceeds what's in the budget, then the money's not there unless we transfer it from reserves, and that's not supposed to happen in the course of the year.
so are you saying that the seniors are now at 0?
Now what?
At 0.
Oh, yes, essentially.
Okay,
Because we did cover you, because I guess the bill that was submitted included the August bus trip being prepaid.
right,
Right.
okay. So they're paid up till August,
Right.
and you're saying that they are now actually in a negative.
Well, there's
No.
Not since they got the pond money.
No, not.
Well, I mean, they would have been in a negative if you weren't so kind to give them some bond money.
Right,
Well, you would have overspent they would have overspent had it not been for us transferring the money to
right.
cover it, but we
Okay.
did.
All right. I will let them know then. Thank you so much.
Anyone, oh yeah, what are we, again, Ted?
Yeah, Teresa brought something up that I just thought I'd say 2, 3 words about. She asked a really good question about that resolution and what the state legislature actually did. And your answer, Joel, was plausible, but not referring to anything, the actual wording. And that's really what I was talking about when I made my statement, which was that really, have you guys actually seen the legislation and the reasons why they did it and why not? And for what it's worth, I don't think they could cut a term short. What they might well do is have interim terms that were 3 years for after the next election. But that's all got to be specified in the law, and really someone ought to have read it before you pass a resolution against it.
Okay. Anyone else?
You have to come up to the mic, sorry, because they can't hear if
What's your name?
My name's Heather.
Heather?
Yeah, Heather Coffey. I just wondered if all of the questions that they have about this, the link that you guys posted in blue at the top, that is posted, aren't these a matter of public record?
Yeah.
So we could look them up on the internet at whatever website that is, and then read through it, and that could answer the questions you might have, is what I was thinking, because that's what I was about to do, if I can find it.
Oh, yeah. Maybe you could give a report.
yeah.
Yeah, yes, certainly I could, but I'm wondering if the town board did before making a decision.
Well, she was talking to the last speaker.
That was me.
I think she was referring to what Ted was talking.
I know, but Leslie was talking to the last speaker.
Right.
Okay. Correspondence. I don't think there is any. Is there a chance?
No.
Other than the usual, nothing specifically for the record. Announcements, none that I'm aware of. Might remind people that we're having a little bit of a send off for David and a welcome for Greg Putnick, our new planner, at 5 o'clock before the next town board meeting, which is on 16th.
16th? At what time? 5 o'clock?
If you want to eat and drink, you have to be here in person.
Not going to be on the town calendar for a reminder.
Well, not a bad idea for them.
Yeah.
Do that, Janice?
Sure. I can do that.
Did you have a chance to do the clerk's report?
I did not have a chance to do the clerk's report, and I actually just saw that Steve had his code enforcement report in the folder. So I've linked it now, and I'm happy to share it with you all, share screen.
Maybe we, yeah, because we didn't have a chance to look at it.
Yeah, I have it.
It
Yeah.
won't take long to review if we just put it up.
Okay, I can. Give me 1 second, share screen. Share desktop 3.
Nice.
Well, Steve's here, you probably do it verbally.
How's that?
Good. A new house, little one.
What?
We have a new house, a little one. That's you?
That's a very small house.
Yeah,
I
That's
can't
about
understand you
cozy.
or whoever's speaking right now. That was a mumble thing.
Oh, the new construction is your house?
Is it yours?
yeah,
All right.
all right. Good. Any questions for Steve?
Hmm.
Thanks, Janice.
Yep.
Then, kind of gave the update already on the plan transition, so,
Right.
David last full day with us was on Friday. And Greg Putnick's first full day for us is the 21st. So we got about a 3-week gap here where the two of them are going to work together nights and weekends to try to keep the lights on and simmering on the back burner. If need is to deal with the planning board meeting.
Right.
Stuff that's already before that board, so that it doesn't get postponed because nobody's around,
Right.
but they'll work together on the transition. And once again, you can talk to them both on 16th,
And what time did you say the shindig is at?
5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. Okay. Thank you.
Meeting minutes, where are we with this?
I'd like to move that we approve May 17th meeting minutes.
Second. Yep.
Any discussion about that? Yeah, good. Okay, Dennis?
Connors,
Yes,
Hunter,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
Gagnon.
Yes. So how do we get the others towards getting approved?
Well, they had put in the information we need to get them corrected, and then we'll.
Yeah,
next
or-
time after they're done.
yeah, and if not, we can just say they were reviewed and not approved or
Right.
something, and then just
So you think you can find time, Dennis, between now and the next meeting to look at the suggested changes and incorporate
I
them into?
actually already did, and they're all. Though I think the only one I didn't get to was the July one.
Okay. But since I have time to check.
Yeah.
We'll do it next time.
okay.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Yep.
Abstract. We did put the highway on. Okay, they're willing to consider it, you know. I was kind of late in the process, but
Yes,
it was.
Short, it's okay.
Laura was indisposed and she managed
It
to
was
get
a
it done.
short one, so
Yes.
if it was 2 pages long, it would have been a problem. But I'll move the highway fund, vouchers 156 to 160 for $7,969.60.
Second.
Oh,
Connors,
Yes,
Hunter,
Yes.
sorry, I lost my place. Woodworth,
Yes.
Gagnon.
yes.
Thank you all for your patience at them being at that time. I really didn't think I was going to be able to give you one, but I kind of got some things this morning. So thank you.
it's okay. Thank you. I had just some questions about heading and stuff on the
Yeah, I know it took it wrong.
on the general fund. And the only thing in the content of the general fund was 90 cents worth of tax that was paid by Mary Ann.
Well, for her. What it-
Yeah,
what it
I
was
don't
black
know
with.
if people want to just, let it drop or change her voucher from 1241 to 1151. That was 90 cents.
What did she buy? How did she buy?
She ordered, she also ordered it with stuff that for herself, so, the tax was
Yeah.
put on it. And I think she just forgot to take it off of this total. it was, you know, bags and it was for for her job here,
It was a vacuum sealed bag and a kneaded eraser.
racer, yeah. So,
And I already took the 90 cents off of the abstract, so it's there. If you'd like to approve that.
it wasn't off an hour ago. I came up with $11.51 without the tax. Well, it says 12:41. Oh, so it was taken off in the last hour?
I did not look at the time. It was probably more than an hour ago, though.
Okay, what total do you have?
Yeah.
I only took it off in the abstract. I took off the 90 cents for Mary Ann to bring it to 11.51, leaving a total of $22,958.09.
Right. Okay.
Right.
So I move general fund abstract 16 vouchers 244 through 250 for 22,000. 958 and 90.
09.
Right.
Yeah, I remarked the same thing, Dan. The title is correct, but the header for the abstract has abstract number 15 instead of 16.
And I changed those as well, too.
Second.
Seconded.
Well, the voucher list is then not right either, unless you change that. Did you change that voucher list?
What do you mean the numbers?
Well, it says
Yes.
248.
It says 248 on the abstract. It's
Yeah, so that's the part you're talking about, the header.
right.
Okay,
And that was
Mm.
fixed.
yeah.
And,
If you look at the live version of the abstract, it will show.
Take the right number.
Yeah, I'm loading.
Okay,
Okay,
all right. Anyone,
So Connor's moved it. Woodward
Yes.
second. We're ready for the vote?
Yeah.
Connors,
yes.
Hunter,
yes.
Woodworth,
Yes.
and Gagnon.
yes.
I do have a question though. Why is the youth programming Q4 just being paid now and Q1 just being paid now? Because that's 6 months out of date.
Yeah, I know.
I can explain that.
They were late getting them in.
No, when they sent them to us, they sent them with a very odd email address that said finance, and then that was from whom it is, finance, and then it had in the workplace where there's supposed to be a subject, it said no subject. So those are the kinds of things, they look like junk mail
Like Stan, yeah.
and spam. So I contacted them again and said, this keeps happening. Can't we do something about it? And there was a long discussion back and forth when, it was on email and Joanne Coates, I believe it is, said that it was a problem with the software for the billing and they have changed it and now it has a subject. Yay. So that's why it's there. That's what happened. It's very embarrassing because I said, this is not the way we do business and can't we do something about it? It keeps happening. And so they knew 100% that it's not us. It was an issue. So that's done. It's fixed.
Thanks.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to business. Appointment to fill vacancy on town board. As Ted mentioned, we had 2 candidates last time and both interviewed very well. But to get something out there, I move to appoint Paul Henson. Fill the position,
I'll second that.
and then we can talk about why.
I thought both people interviewed very well. It was sort of difficult comparing because I thought people were really different, which is good. That's not a bad thing. But Paul did talk a lot about listening to people, and getting engaged with what's happening in the town. He talked about, in talking about the job of the town board. Kevin talked a lot about representing residents who feel underrepresented, which is an important thing. And Paul talked about listening to residents. But he also talked about learning how the system works. And, he mentioned fiscal decisions needing to be made, and finding ways to change and improve where possible. And Kevin obviously has skills and interests that would be a benefit. I think one of the bottom lines for me was Paul's experience with the code enforcement, and that might be a lot of people are complaining about vacant buildings and properties that are in bad shape, and I was thinking, well, maybe Paul might have some good ideas about that. Working with that, but I hope if no matter who gets picked, I hope the person who's not picked stays involved and can make a contribution to town efforts. So that's my 2 cents. I have to admit that in making my list, it did make a difference to me in thinking that Paul had already expressed an interest in the town board membership before the vacancy became an issue. So he was already he threw his hat in. That did impact me, in my thoughts.
Mine too.
You have to come up with your own stuff. You can't use my stuff.
Well,
See how he did that?
There's no reason why we can't have the same reasons. but-
Okay. Yeah.
But, Paul is the nominee of my party, does weigh in my consideration that, having him be sort of up to speed, and before he would be elected to the office, I saw the flux. Still he was elected, of course.
Right.
I think one of the major points is that especially if somebody takes over quickly, that it's helpful if they've already had a lot of experience with the town. And having been code enforcement officer, he's very well connected with what's going on in the town, with many of the residents of the town. He could start more quickly, and he did a very good job. And he's not been separate from the town since he's not been code enforcement officer. He's been involved with the solar panel since that time. So he's still been involved with the town. So he's still up on what's going on. So he'd have the shortest transition time for understanding what's going on, especially when you start at the last minute for taking over something.
Since you mentioned that, then I will say that another issue that might outweigh is that his experience might be able to be good help with the transition for the planners because of his town experience. I mean, I know he's not the planner, but
But he certainly
knows.
is familiar with that
Right.
office. He worked really closely with Sue.
Mhm. Yeah.
And CJ, I think, for a while.
Who overlapped with who?
I think it was CJ. I hadn't thought of it.
So I'm ready to vote. Yes,
Yes. First letter of the alphabet, C. Connors,
Yes,
Hunter,
Yes.
Woodworth,
Yes,
Gagnon.
yes. Thank you, Kevin, for
yeah,
my. And I do hope to take advantage of your skills.
I know.
Yeah, what about this resolution for the government local? I confess I did not look at the enabling legislation to be why. What I heard, this is only what I heard, was that it's a money saving thing.
To have all the elections in 1 year.
Yeah, instead of having, all of the associated
It's
expenses.
money saving for them.
Yeah. But the reasons not to do it are pretty compelling, I thought. And are set forth at great length. Bob Lynch of Enfield is the one who brought this to TCOG. After the legislature dealt with it. And the main concern is that the local elections would kind of be obscured, if you will, by being part of a much larger electoral process.
Right.
I mean, the advantage is that you have a lot more people voting, but having a lot more people voting doesn't matter if they're not any better informed.
Yeah.
everything I read about it doesn't seem like it was that well thought out in terms of the impact. At the present time, I don't think it's a good idea to make that change. I would recommend veto.
I have to admit, I have not read about it. But when I'm hearing and I'm wondering if it came to TCOG from another town and the Governor Hochul was already planning to veto it, is that what?
Well, no, what it is that the legislature, both houses, the Assembly and the Senate, both passed legislation that would make this change. The county legislature weighed in saying, we think this is not a good idea.
Right.
And the governor has the option of either vetoing it or signing it.
Wait, our Tompkins County legislature?
Passed. The language in this resolution is basically that language with Danby stuck in.
Right.
Yeah.
And in fact, the way I got it from the agenda for the TCOG meeting where TCOG was plugged in instead of plugged in. I just substituted Danby. And made it our resolution, and they had a couple more people that were going to be sent to, but I think the team was Kathy Hochul.
Well, I don't see any problem with asking her to veto it. I mean, we can't make her put the pen on the paper no matter what, but we can weigh in and say, don't you want to think about this a little more? That's what it sounds like to me.
So, it sounds like there's a willingness to consider it. So I move the resolution, which would have us sending our recommendation to her to veto rather than sign that into law.
I'll second it.
And it's copy to other people also.
Yes. basically the
senators and
the
the
relevant
assembly.
leaders of the assembly and Senate.
That's who voted for it.
Well, they're the assembly, the speaker, whatever, the head honcho for the assembly and the Senate, and then our representative, Anna Kellis and they
Voted.
are the ones to whom we would send this, so that they know that we're asking the governor to veto it.
Yeah, the only other thing I have been hearing in the news very recently is that a whole lot of states and parties are running out of money. And so if they're trying to suddenly save money, I don't think this is, I kind of agree with Pat. It's like, don't just, maybe you better look at the methods and maybe look at why these things are happening instead of just suddenly changing. And I think Teresa's question and our question is the same thing. What happens to the terms?
Mm.
So I
Yeah.
mean, it seems like a reasonable thing to say, wait.
I mean, I have heard people say, why are our local elections in, a different year?
Right.
Why not have them all be all at once? It would make for some impressively long ballots. That was one of the other provinces did.
Lines.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean-
so a lot of people to focus on, it's like sometimes when you have a
Right.
bunch of what do you call them, not resolutions, but
Proposals,
on
yeah.
the flip side of the ballot. It can be, if it's a really long ballot, it's an awful lot to think about.
Yeah.
In the voting booth.
Well, for that, people, we're supposed to know about the propositions before we go.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. But, more discussion about it? Okay.
I think it would be good to at least wait and hear more about it. I mean, to send this on and ask them not to do it now.
Mhm. It wasn't even on my radar
Yeah,
that they were even thinking about doing it.
Well, this is another one of those things that people in the town and might say, how come I don't get a chance to say anything about it? I mean, we're all like sitting here, like how this, all of a sudden this came and
Mhm.
there's very little way. So if we ask her to veto it, that's another way for us to say, town people might, maybe, I mean, that whole idea of having all the elections in the same year makes sense, but just because it makes sense right this second does not mean that everybody's thought the whole situation out properly,
Mm.
or nobody else gets to weigh in.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not sure whose initiative it was that brought it to the legislature in the first place. But that would be interesting. Back
Yeah.
now.
right.
So I'm willing to, in an under-researched way, nevertheless weigh in. My preference would be not to go from having our local elections in the odd number of years.
I'll second that.
I mean, that's basically what this is. Did we not have a? Yes. We did.
You moved it, but I did not.
We didn't have a second. Now you do.
Yes.
Okay. We should have had a second before we talked about it.
I know.
I thought we did, but I didn't. But
Any further discussion? Okay, Janice.
Connors,
Yes,
Hunter,
yes,
I'm sorry.
Yes,
Thank you. Gagnon. That was a yes as well. There's some muffles going on. I can't quite hear Joel.
probably
Well, I
paid.
didn't hear your Woodworth either, but
Did you hear my, I'm sorry? There was a lot of shuffling going on.
Yeah,
yeah. Okay. Progress updates on noise and short-term rentals.
what?
Progress updates on noise and short-term rentals. I had two conversations today that are relevant to the noise. Somebody called me earlier in the day from the town of Catherine because they had heard a video clip from when I was interviewed by Joe Salzone of WHCU on noise months ago, in which I expressed the hope that we could use the state law and not have to pass the local one. Calling to tell me that they had heard that and that was not their experience, but they found that they had tried to do it in their town and it didn't work. That they concluded that they needed to have a local law. And I told her that that's kind of what we come around to also. But what that local law looks like is something that we're still working on.
Did they pass one?
It's in process. They haven't passed it yet.
Huh.
It's gone through at least one revision. It's like version 2, not there yet. Interestingly, a guy, Crow, who wrote it for him. So that might be, yes. Well, I spoke to the guy this afternoon about something else briefly. And I asked him about that and said, I'll be happy to share that with the committee. Something else we can add to the mix as you weigh in on what to do. The other thing was I got a call this afternoon. There's a big concert weekend planned on South Danby Road. You can
Are we invited?
check it out on the web. It's the bbqny.com. This is evidently the seventh one of these that they've done, but the previous ones were in Trumansburg, and they just moved to South Danby.
So what is this?
It's a big deal. Like it's been like, bunch of bands, a whole bunch of bands, including some that we're all familiar with, local,
So who's organizing this?
new residents of that barn on South Danby Road that wondered about how they got it built, whether it got turned into a residence without a building permit across the street from Mary Woodson and Henry. Just a little bit away from where Rhonda is. She's probably going to.
That's not right across from them. That would be Cloud's house. There's no barn there, no big barn there. Must be up a
There's a
little.
couple barns. There is one big barn.
If you look on the
there.
website for it, there's an address. It's fine.
That big dark, is it really dark brown? I think I know which one it is. If that's it.
Yeah.
So what's the website? BBQ?
The BBQ ny.com. So, as of now, we don't have, although we talked about it years ago, we don't have any kind of a regulations regarding large gatherings. And this is being built as a, weekend thing with like 200 bands or something. It's rising grassroots.
Wow.
But it's also somewhat problematic. The camping options, they're either camping your vehicle or campsites available, and we don't have any provision in our zoning law as of now for camping at all. Nor do we have anybody around to interface with them about. We don't have anything in our zoning law that allows us to do camping. So I raise it because this is something that we're talking about doing, but here we have somebody going and doing something that we shouldn't be overlooking.
So how did you hear about this?
One of the neighbors called me concerned about it, and they wish to remain anonymous because they are on good terms with this neighbor.
Right.
And don't want to, turn sour on them, but they're concerned about the potential disruptions in the neighborhood from a large gathering. Wow. And so, what are you going to do about it?
It sounds like a combination of noise and short-term rentals to me.
Yeah, it is kind of.
Oh, boy. I think that these are reasons why we're still soliciting comments from residents that would be moved. I know that there's been comments that 185 people constitutes, hearing from the residents, but 185 is not the number of residents. So I still think would be nice if we could incorporate the idea that there are concerns that people, often, like, this is one thing that people don't even think about, and it's not on the radar. And as we're talking about with the short-term rentals, I had a visitor from the Carolinas who told me that a golf course near them is going to have 250 motorhome pads. And that these are things that we do. It's nice if we could think ahead. That's what all of this is about. So that's interesting. So what was the other? You said you had two things.
That was
Oh,
the
Catherine,
second one.
Catherine, yeah, okay.
So have these people talked with any of the neighbors?
Evidently not. Well, obviously, I'm not sure how they got wind of it, because they did, and then they found the website. There's a lot of information on the website. Because it's not the first time, this is the seventh time that they've done this, but never in Danby before. They just moved to Danby and they brought the event with them, basically. It was on Agard Road in Trimsburg before. So what's a little surprising to me is that they didn't check to see whether there were any town regulations that would apply, right, to a gathering of this magnitude without,
Well, just the traffic and the parking. I mean, it's,
yeah.
forget about, before you even get to the noise. Yeah.
Mhm.
But it's always surprising to me that, they don't first go to neighbors and say, hey, you're invited,
Yeah,
Do you remember, did you say what the date of it is?
on August 26th.
August 26th.
Yeah, from 25th, 20, yeah, 2 days,
22nd, 23rd.
25, 26.
Were you invited? Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. 30 bands. Did they say?
30 bands?
They give the address too, don't they?
Yeah, it's 153 South Danby Road.
Wow. That's right there.
Mhm.
Because Rick is 100, right?
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
up the street.
Hmm. Well,
Yeah.
What are you gonna do about it?
Well, that's.
we can't do anything.
Huh?
It sounds to me like we can't do a single thing about it,
Well,
except that we can
except
say
the
that we
fact that
don't
they
have any zoning that it permits it.
Well, it's the camping part of it. I mean, the event part of it, we don't have any regulations to say no
Right,
about. The camping part of it, there's nothing in our regulations to allow it. As of yet, and we've come down on other people for doing it, saying, it's not an allowed use until we come up with some changes in our zoning law to address it. I'm sure they won't be happy to hear that it can't be for no go.
who's gonna be able to tell them that? Is that Steve? Is it code? I mean.
It would be,
Hey, Steve.
it would be the code enforcement officer, but for the zoning side of things, which would have been David. But here we are between planners.
Right. Wow.
So.
I think it sounds to me like we
jump all
Probably-
over them, or do we just say, hey, this is not okay. We're not going to do anything about it this time, but don't do it again. Or-
I know. Well, the camping, that's the only thing that can be said. And I mean, the one thing that could be said is, can you, people will just sleep on the ground anyway,
Mhm.
but maybe encourage people to make reservations at the state parks if possible.
Mhm.
But I mean, it's unlikely that there'll be open reservations.
They're already booked into next year.
Right. Wow.
Do these people own the whole field behind or something?
I don't know.
It's not a very large lot.
Yeah,
Maybe Teresa knows. It's her neighborhood. Teresa, you know anything
Will
about
they
this
be
party?
bringing, will they be renting porta potties? Does it say anything about that?
I would say.
Right, I could look it up too. I could put it on here.
They're selling tickets?
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, it's a big commercial event.
wow.
It's under 14 and free. The tickets are $135, depending on whether you're doing the campsite. or not.
Not zone commercial. I mean, it's not, you know,
Wow.
Commercial activity, yeah.
Okay.
Looks pretty nice, actually, but
So I found flyers from last year
mhm.
and the issue I think they're gonna run into is they're trying to do this because they're running till 1 a.m. last year.
Yeah.
And that-
Maybe you should be on the mic. Sorry.
they ran until 1 a.m.
Well, you know, I'm not surprised. What does grassroots do?
Well, they go all night. No,
Do they?
no,
Yeah.
but sometimes.
I'm sure they go later
some of them,
than 10 p.m.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of people that are very familiar. Lots of local
You
people.
mean the band?
Yes.
Yeah, you got some pretty well-known local bands.
Wow. I don't know what was supposed to be. The first time, I mean, it's,
I mean, there've been some big parties out your way. Yeah. Was it out Gunderman?
I mean, we have, you know, people get married.
Way
and
out.
weddings, you know,
yeah, but those are private events.
those are private events, exactly.
It's
And
the idea of selling
time limited
tickets.
usually. I
Yeah.
mean,
Right. And even if
um,
they're not, it's a one-off.
yeah.
But when you're selling a tickets,
This is a commercial event.
right, and if they're gonna do that, then there's issues about sanitation and everything.
Right. And they're
Wow,
probably circumventing the issues with the health department because they got all food trucks and stuff coming into vendors providing food rather than doing it themselves.
wow.
It's pretty
They picked
cool, but it's not very well, you know, the context doesn't, they should have checked with the town.
I can't even imagine doing something like this without checking with the town. This is where publicity or everything.
This is Mary's house, yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're being blind. I'm feeling blindsided. I don't even know what to say. I think that this is when we need to do better about talking about zoning and codes, et cetera, and check with the town before you know, that's why I always feel like if we could tell realtors, you know, you've got to tell the people before you move, check and see what the rules are.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and you want to not, you want people to be able to have parties and you know, I mean,
Right.
it's when it's overblown that it's
Well,
probably
this
a
isn't, it's
problem.
not a party when it's called, when you have to pay to
Right,
just go.
right.
This is it's a commercial event.
Yeah, it's a commercial party. So,
Well,
Yeah.
parties,
Same
okay,
with
so if we
grassroots.
define a party and we define, we say people have weddings,
The party, nobody defines it
right?
as a concert.
Right. I mean, we have
that's just, this is.
Yes, it is.
graduations and all those things. We all are saying, yes, if my neighbors want to set off a few noisy things at a graduation and they have a band and they stay up late, you tell your neighbors. And
Yeah.
I mean, even the whole thing, Scott Wiggins, there was a wedding at La Tourelle and Scott Wiggins went to all the neighbors. He went to the county. He went to the town of Ithaca. He got all the proper permissions and he did everything right. And still people were upset about it. And that's doing things right. And this one sounds like they didn't do anything, nothing. I mean, Janice, have you heard anything about this before? Nobody came in and said, who do I talk to or anything?
No, I have
Oh.
not heard anything about it.
Amazing.
You weren't even invited, right?
I did not get an invite, no.
Since it does violate zoning, the camping part, they should definitely be talked to about that.
Right.
But what does the talking to consist of? Are we gonna be hard nosed about it and say, don't do that? With it being, what, a little 3 weeks away?
Do we fine them for that, what, breaking the code? I mean, not, I don't know either.
Well,
So speak into it.
You
Maybe we
recall
should
that,
check with
grassroots got in trouble last year, not this year, but they ended up in court because the health department cited them for not getting appropriate permits for the campgrounds and so forth. And they ended up paying fines, I believe, and they got their act together. So this year, they got all their permits lined up ahead of time and we're okay. Nobody tried to do anything here.
Right.
To even check whether they needed any permissions or whether it's or whether it's even permitted use.
Maybe right, check with the guy. I mean, this is, I'm, even though I keep talking, I feel speechless. I'm sorry. I don't know what to say.
And I think the county should be notified.
Me too.
Especially if that was an issue, the county should be notified, and both the county should talk to them as well as town.
There's poor Steve with his hand up.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm happy to have Steve weigh in here. But
Steve, he's got his hand up, he's smiling, no?
So coincidentally, we
Got
are going-
invited.
wait, so do you know anything about this, Steve?
I haven't heard anything about it, no. But coincidentally, we are going through something extremely similar to this down here in Spencer. Only in our case here in Spencer, it is every weekend, not just one weekend. And it's really starting to annoy the neighbors. So we're in the same boat in that there's no zoning in Spencer, so we have no laws against it. We have no noise ordinance or anything like that. We contacted the Tioga County Health Department to have them go do an on-site inspection because of the camping portion.
Yeah.
And they basically found it to be sort of sufficient, but lacking in bathroom facilities. So they were going to work with them to try to get permits to do that. We looked at the angle for the venue having to get an operating permit, but you have to sell 1,000 tickets or more before an operating permit requirement kicks in. So what we've ended up doing is we've had our town attorney send a letter to the venue telling them that they need to come before the town board, because we don't have a planning board here, to come before the town board for site plan review and approval to get, so that they can keep going with their weekly concerts. And if they do that, we're going to put all kinds of restrictions on it, like length, not from sun up to 3 a.m. Requirements for off-street parking, all kinds of things like that they would have to conform to. So yeah, it's a sticky thing, and I'm kind of now sounds like going through it in both of my towns. And the similarities are that neither town has any way to stop it right now. Maybe,
Well, we might, because I think
year.
it's not a permitted use. A concert venue is I would say, commercial activity in an area that's not zoned for it, but.
Yeah, that's an avenue.
And then, of course, there's the whole camping component, which we don't have any provision for.
Well, plus vehicles on the roof with
Yeah.
leaking into the ground, leaky oil. I mean, that's why why Treeman put in that great big bridge, because if you have a number of cars going through each one drips a little bit. So they put in that really expensive bridge at the big Treeman, Robert Treeman Park on the lower part.
Yeah.
because of that.
That's not a legal issue right now.
No, but it's
the other
it's a
two are legal
seeker,
issues- But the other two are legal issues right now.
Mhm.
right?
The fact that they haven't done anything with the county, and the fact that there is no provision for camping, that we ought to deal with it immediately. And let them know that they're in violation.
Joel, could you give me the website address again for the event? I didn't catch it when you said it.
So it's either
It's,
rural one or
it's
low
the,
residential.
THE. The BBQ, as in barbecue. The BBQNY.com. Very simple. Kind of a nice website too.
There's the listing, we made it at the bottom.
I think it's low density residential.
Mhm.
I think it's in here.
We have one more comment, somebody was looking for.
Consideration of if there's so many people and you're concerned about hospitals or medical care being easily accessed, would that be a thing?
Right,
And is it possible that they moved here and bought the land because you don't have zoning and it's easier to ask forgiveness than ask permission?
And we do have zoning.
We have zoning.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Talking about the other
Town
time.
of-
Well, I wondered
Town of
if-
Spencer does not.
I didn't know if you guys had zoning, do they would say you can't after a certain hour? Okay,
You have zoning, but it doesn't, it doesn't address the after certain hours, because it's not use is permitted at all.
oh, okay. And so being concerned about accidents or medical care being needed, heat
Fire.
stroke, I mean, I know it's cooler, as you guys were talking about earlier.
Who knows, it's gonna be like 26.
Yeah, maybe that's an avenue.
Yeah,
Well, we can certainly bring it to the attention of the health department. to
Right.
What they might need to do to be in compliance with any regulations they might have. And the question is, what are we going to do about them not being in compliance with regulations that we do have? If any.
well, we can let them know what they are. It looks to me like it's a low density residential
Yeah.
lot
Mhm.
surrounded by rural one.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, my inclination,
Which I can't imagine they're gonna be able to have parking
I can't
on that
either.
one lot.
I
mean,
can't imagine it either.
there's a
Well,
field.
not to mention campsites. They're talking
Right.
about.
I wonder if they also bought the field behind, there's
Or
a huge,
either that or secured lease for the event or something. I
Yeah,
don't know.
maybe they're paying if they're paying the other landowner. I mean, there's probably some things that really are questionable.
Yeah. Well, I guess in the absence of the planner, maybe I should try to contact them and say you're in violation of a whole bunch of stuff in our laws. But I'm inclined to say, not going to jump all over for this year. You better work it out between now and next year.
well, and is it something they just do once a year?
Yeah.
I mean, the health department is probably the biggest thing. I mean,
They probably already dealt,
besides
yeah, they
being a
probably
problem.
already dealt with the health department because this was in Shrewsbury before, previous 6 times.
Well, then, I mean, we should know about that.
So I can call health department and find out what their experience has been with these folks, because it's not the first time.
Well, the other thing I think is important to find out how much land they actually own that they're planning to do this
Yeah.
on. If that lot is like 1 acre, how small is, how big is it? Does anybody know?
It's right here.
Yeah,
I don't have how big
we
it
can
is.
put the number in Zillow, and it'll tell you how big the lot is, but that doesn't mean they don't own more. Are you looking too, Kevin? Okay. Everybody's looking at their devices.
No.
Oy vey.
Yeah, anyway, thought I should bring that up, because I found out about this afternoon.
Okay, so I think that I will say that the noise group, staying on that, how it came up as the short-term rentals and the noise.
Yeah, both relevant in this situation.
And I think they're both relevant together anyway.
Mhm.
And perhaps they should be more, maybe we should rethink how we're approaching this as a joint venture. I mean, that's just a sudden thought of mine. It might make more sense.
I think there's still a lot of differences between the two because there's.
There are a
short-term
lot of
rentals.
differences.
Yeah, short-term rental is not necessarily noise oriented at all.
Well, it is, because that's one of the reasons people are angry about some of it. One of the reasons people want it is because of noise, et cetera. But it's just, I didn't say
There's substantial overlap.
yeah. Anyway, as far as the noise group, has been, we had a couple of, I think, 3 good meetings before Steve left. And then the last meeting was, only Kevin came, but he had to leave for an appointment, and then for a doggy. So, and we haven't planned another one yet. And I think, personally, I think that I was hopeful that we were moving in a good direction where we agree, but that even in that group, there was a thought that we needed more input from more people. And I know we've all talked about that, but I still think it's relevant to ask for more input. And and I now the issue with Catherine. Is that how you're supposed to pronounce that?
Yeah,
I always say Catherine, but
I mean, Catherine is what it is, but it's pronounced Catherine.
yeah. And besides that, we did hear that Lansing is trying to do something, and the sheriff's department would really, really like it if the small towns would get together.
Yeah.
Pat heard that
Makes a
too.
lot of sense.
Yes, because where we had gotten to was the idea that we could have a very simple law that was similar to the state,
Yeah.
and then everything else be done with an ordinance, which makes more sense to me, having sat through our meetings together. But we aren't there yet. We aren't. That group isn't, and that group isn't going to write the laws either, even if we were. So we need more input. We need more time.
So another meeting and a few more people maybe. And
More than one meeting.
resources.
Yeah, resources, right?
Yeah. and Research.
Well, we'll probably have a little slippage here because of between planners.
Right.
We don't have the staff support that we otherwise.
Well, and that's similar with the short-term rental. I mean, David
Yes.
was going to,
Yeah.
he said he had a short draft, which
On the
I'll
short.
try and get a hold of it and, see what it is and
Mhm.
see if that needs to be tweaked too, so.
I mean, we can have another of our meetings without, I can call one and see who all is able to come, but I still think that
Yeah,
I'm hearing from inside and outside that there's more information once people start thinking about it.
I mean, it's an iterative process, I guess I would say, I don't think perfection is possible here.
No.
We're trying to strike a compromise between, creating a tool that gives some recourse to those who feel
Right.
that they're being put upon, while
Right.
not handing a club to those who would
Right.
abuse it as a way of harassing their neighbors.
right, right.
instead, in a different way.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's a single one.
Or
of us that
hamper,
wants-
people that have been doing,
Yeah,
doing activities that have not been a problem,
Right.
that,
right.
that a law.
Yeah.
could-
But anyway, it's a
Pinpoint.
it's a pretty hard needle to thread.
Well, especially when we're facing something like this, all of a sudden you think, well, we didn't even discuss something like, well, we did, but nobody, just to be, well,
But here it is sort of in your face.
right.
There was somebody who used to have, and I thought it was maybe yearly large parties. And I thought it was out Gunderman Road.
There was one on Comfort Road.
That's right, they used.
No, it was past that. It was somebody private. It was somebody, I know who used to talk to me about it. Maybe that's,
Yeah, but right, though, when Angel Heart was, going thing, they had they had annual parties.
yeah.
Yeah, they invited all the neighbors.
Oh.
Well, did they charge money and play all night? I mean,
No,
this is the thing,
no.
right?
No.
That's
What?
It
the,
was an
this is
individual
just-
party that they invited and it was not accepted by all the neighbors because it was not nice and somebody in fact parked their truck in our driveway.
well, there are always going to be problems. But but the point is that wasn't a commercial venture,
No, it's not.
Yeah.
right? And this is very different.
It is not, it's
And
not
the
the
people-
same at all.
Right, and the thing that on Comfort Road, one of the early years here, there were probably. I'm not good at estimating numbers of tents when I see them, but I would say there are probably 10 or
Weddings.
more at that one house, and apparently they had, and it could have been wedding weekend and family, but I don't think it wasn't a public event. I never heard a thing, I was just shocked when I saw the tents. But we are talking about allowing something like that with the short-term rental. Right now, we don't have it, So Steve got special because of the agriculture and the, whatever he did with the cidery to get that.
Mm.
But that was
But this is
planned ahead and
30
asked,
bands.
this is,
How many bands?
30.
And some really well-known acts too.
Yeah, there are lots of them. Like, there are people I know, who feel like I know personally, like, oh my God.
Yes,
Wow. I mean, even the band members, that's a lot of traffic and heavy equipment.
yeah.
It's not a small deal. I mean, when I've had rehearsals on my little packed deck, we had it for like 3 hours and it takes an hour for people to bring their stuff in and set it up. It's a big coordinated event that has 30 bands or whatever it is.
So it seems like we need to,
Okay, if you're
talk to the
willing.
health department and
Yeah.
look at the zoning and what we can do with that. But yeah, I mean, it's to me, it maybe for the next planner, I mean, I keep going back to the thing that CJ said that we should probably do. That was the last thing she said, that we should, the low hanging fruit, that we should do site plan review for ag development.
Yeah.
Not that you can't say no, but you can say, you need to do site plan, we need to be able to know a fire truck can get in there, we need to, so
Right.
if nothing else, a large party, I don't know how we could,
Well,
a
maybe
commercial thing,
let the fire
but to have,
department know.
site plan review, it sounds like that's what Catherine was, or Steve talked about.
Yeah,
doing.
I put it on the wish list.
Yeah, so,
So when we get to that,
Let call the fire department too and tell them. They might have some thought about it.
well, it's fine.
I mean, it is, the ambulance people,
they could come out with hoses.
yeah.
Okay, ready, Lee? Or,
Swimming party. Yeah.
All right, well, I'm stunned. Let's move.
Yeah,
I'm ready to move on to the next subject while I recover from this.
the status report and wastewater option study. You recall, we got a grant to do a wastewater study.
Yeah.
The intention was that they would come up with some,
No.
a report, engineering report, which would, explore the options. And they have done that to some degree. What's happening though is that there was just a bunch of things that dragged the process out. So as originally envisioned, they were gonna draft a report, with the options in it. They were gonna run it by us. There was an opportunity for public comment and then revision, before we finally submitted. But, between them, not getting things done in a timely way and me being slow to respond when they finally did get things to us, we're kind of at the end of the process when the thing's supposed to be closed out, and the end stages part is being chopped off. So we're going to get a report, but with no opportunity to comment on it and revise it, before it's submitted to the Environmental Facilities Corporation. Say, okay, here you go. So the report is, it's in a draft form, for me basically to review. David's no longer with us here, we're at the end. David was very much involved. The mistake they made, they had staff turnover, and when they sent the draft for review, they sent it to me, and they didn't send it to David. And I didn't realize that they didn't send it to David, so it came in the midst of a bunch of other stuff. I didn't deal with it in a timely way. So we lost almost a month there where David could have commented and had
Right.
input on it, but now it's, kind of precluded by the fact that it didn't get dealt with more timely.
How long is the report?
It's 250 pages, but of that 250 pages, the meat of it is the first 60 or so. Got some good stuff in it, but it looked at the possibility of sewers.
All right, sewers?
That was kind of their main thing, because this is an engineering outfit. You recall that or maybe you don't recall, when we were looking at the possibility of doing there's a project in West Danby where I think it's an 8-unit thing on the corner of Short Road. And I was trying to talk Mike McLaughlin into doing a cluster with a shared septic system. And in order to do a shared septic system, if you do it on individually, one person owns the whole thing. It's not
Right.
It's not hard to get permits.
Right.
If you do it where the lots are individually owned, it's a big deal.
Right.
It's the kind of hassle that Whitehawk
Right.
went through. I mean, I ended up having to form a transportation corporation
Right.
in order to deal with it. That is an option, but it's an onerous one. I was hoping that we could create a floating district that would allow for a water and sewer district to be created that would land on a property if a developer were to develop a cluster, say with a shared system, or you redevelop a lot like Olivia's.
Right.
That they could be, if it was built to town and health department specifications, that then the town could take over and own it and maintain it. That would be more satisfactory to the health department than dealing with multiple owners,
Right.
cooperative arrangements. So anyway, they did look at that, but what we discovered with the project in West Danby was that in order to consider doing anything, you had to look at everything. So they did look at everything, but the everything is, what about the possibility of sewering in of a possible way? So what they looked at was sewering greater Danby, the hamlet, including the hamlet neighborhoods, right, not sort of a large set, or just the core. And they did the same thing with West End, just the core or the larger hamlet. And how would you do that? And what would the lines look like and what would it cost? So that's kind of cool information to have. And there's basically two approaches to it. You can do package plants for sort of treating the effluent, or you can do what Newfield has done, which is they have essentially individual septic tanks, and then a collection system in a community leach field, or for doing, which we have a community absorption field. Both of those options, and they looked at where the leach fields could be put with the two options, and that's the meat of the report. The other stuff got kind of short shrift, but David was kind of keen on what about alternate systems that I don't know if you're aware, but in the state of New York, the local health departments have a lot of discretion regarding how they apply the state rules on the sanitary code. And here in Tompkins County, the health department is pretty conservative in only allowing alternative systems in problematic situations.
Right.
where like, cottages along the lake, for instance, where
Right.
there's no good way to do a traditional septic system. There are these engineered systems that exist that can do an on-site treatment. But they're more elaborate, they're more expensive, and they require regular maintenance, and it's a headache. You know, when it's on private property, how are you gonna, know that it's being properly maintained and so forth, so they're very reluctant to do it. So we were interested in trying to get them to entertain doing that kind of on-site system for some of the small lots that we've got in the
Right.
hamlet core. Like where the gallery is and where Benjamin's was, for instance. I mean, the lot is so small, if you're gonna do water,
Right.
a well and septic on that lot, you can't really do it with the separation distances with the light and so forth. So, I'm still reviewing the report, but it doesn't look like we're gonna have a whole lot of opportunity to, review and comment before it gets submitted, which is unfortunate, because I think there's gonna be a lot of public interest in looking at it. And it would have been nice to have the consultants able to, like consultant engineers, able to come to a meeting and answer people's questions about why they're recommending what they recommend. Because what they do at the end is they have a recommendation for what we ought to do. And the recommendation is basically to do the core of both hamlets. With the system. And it's multi-million-dollar project in both cases to do, but it does give us enough of a engineering report to pursue grant.
For something that's not looking outside of the box.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So, it would enable, if we were to actually do that, a lot of things that we wouldn't otherwise be even think about doing. The other source system, you could talk about, multi-apartment buildings.
Right.
Kind of, we could create a real center of the town and ways that we can't possibly do it on site.
How far out does Ithaca sewer come out?
What did you
Is
say?
that the king? Really?
Not sure. The water goes by.
Zach was raising his
When you
hand,
look
but I don't
at-
know whether it's because of the relevance of his.
Yeah.
I was just curious in the report if it has the provisions for the holding tanks and leach fields, how that would be set up
Yeah.
potentially. Because that seems like a much more cost effective
Yeah.
way if that's possible to do.
Oh, you mean
Yeah.
septic tank and yeah, right.
Like the combined.
Yeah. That's one of that's one of the options.
It's actually proposed and shows how everything is laid out.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's a whole lot easier, interestingly, and I didn't realize this, but now, you do engineering studies and find out. Danby is actually pretty well set up to do a gravity system. The roads all pretty much go downhill to the main highway, and then the main highway goes pretty much downhill all the way to, most of the way to Millwood. So you can do a system without having a whole lot of, pumping stations and so forth. That was a revelation. West Danby, not so much. It's not near as easy there to, because the place is so hummocky.
Yeah.
So you're talking, it's the difference between, $2 million and $3 million, and what was surprising is that they're almost the same size in the core. Because of, the amount of projected, that you have to engineer in for the treatment.
Is it possible to see the report?
Oh, yeah.
So can Zachary see it? I mean,
Well,
is
it's
it
not-
published? Is
you know,
it, that's what I'm
Yeah,
wondering.
because it's not yet public. I can contact them. In fact, what I did, so my last indication was, because they asked me to sign off on it so they could submit it. I said, Well, it's kind of too bad we didn't get to do these last stage things, and I could contact them and say, how do you feel about sharing this with the town board right now? And we get some feedback on it.
Well, what about asking them to do a little presentation to the public?
To the town, yeah.
For the town.
Yeah, I don't know where we are in terms of the deadline with the EFC. I asked them, how much time we have. And I haven't gotten a response yet, but I'll call Tim Steed, who's the head engineer.
Yeah, they could come to our next meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it is pretty interesting and,
it is, and
and it is pretty relevant in the way the world's
interesting,
going,
relevant, and it's important.
right?
And, and how it's dealt with, could make a big difference in how it's received. So,
Plus, if there's enough interest in that, helps with grant writing, et cetera, et cetera.
yeah.
I mean, and does the fact that West Danby already has a water district make it any easier there? I mean, probably, I mean, I know they're not related, but they are
They are,
pipes.
but yeah, they're both pipes.
They're in the ground, and then
Yeah.
can you go put other pipes where these other pipes are?
Yeah.
You
No, it doesn't make it any easier.
know,
It gives you, having the water makes things possible that would not otherwise be possible. The aquifer here in Danby is a confined aquifer, limited capacity. So, even if we had sewers, the availability of water is going to be a constraint. We're not going to put any high rises in without running into trouble. But, there are systems now, you might be a little bit reluctant to use them, but you can actually recycle your wastewater.
right?
You can.
But there's a new factor.
Okay, so can you ask them if they would be willing to come do a song and dance for
Yes, I will.
an hour now?
Do that.
That would be very interesting.
That could collect the facts about how much time we got, but I think they would be nice to do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's been talked about for years, and it would be nice to hear.
Yeah,
I mean, our other house, we couldn't have a septic or anything. We just have a tank
Right,
and it gets empty.
right.
it's
What
like,
used to be.
yeah,
And they come pump it out,
rather regular.
probably once every 2 years.
Well, one hell of a big tank, in that case.
Yeah, a big tank.
Okay, ask them.
It's what was it? Yesterday's Meals on Wheels. They had written on the side of the truck. In Maine. And when I laughed, I took a picture of it. I was like, oh my God, it's so funny. He said, you think that's funny? You should go to towns where they have the stool bus. Painted on the side of the truck, it looks like children, but they're stools, sitting in windows. It's so funny. Anyway, people have a good time with that.
Wow.
Okay.
All right. So
Question?
I just started a new process. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Yeah, since you have rather thoroughly described and discussed this document, open meetings law, I think, suggests that it has to be made available to the public. I'm not sure, I don't think it's a legal document or, corporate secrets, and I don't think its draft status would protect it. So could you please share it with the public?
yeah, I don't think
You're
that's.
gonna
the case.
ask, right?
I don't think that's the case, but I will ask.
Yeah.
That's what we're just saying. Ask them what we can
The
do.
draft has not been put on the table nor shared with the board, so there's nothing that I don't think the public has any.
But you
necessarily-
have discussed it rather thoroughly. I mean,
I think we've been talking about this project all along. The fact that we've been talking about it all along doesn't mean that everything that's happening all along is accessible by the public.
The question can be asked.
But I will seek, making it available in any event.
Right.
Okay, we started the process. there's a number of things to consider in the course of the budget that are, I think it's worth thinking about before we get into the specifics of it. Laura's going to be distributing the packets to the department heads. I spoke with David about the planning side of things because I wanted his input before he left. And of course, Greg will have no clue coming on board. And we talked about this morning. One area of concern that I had is our track record of enforcement for code violations, property maintenance, and junk law, derelict buildings. We haven't invested a lot of resources for a couple of reasons. One, our human resources are limited. Two, our human nature is not something much fun.
Yeah.
So, when you've got a lot of other stuff to do, it's easy to not devote a lot of resources to enforcement. Steve doesn't like to do it. David didn't like to do it. I spoke to Cindy today. She didn't want to do it either. We may have to, in order to if we think it's important to do this, and I get complaints, people call and say, "What are you going to do about?"
Yeah, yeah, it is important.
Then we're going to have to think about hiring additional staff in order to address this effectively.
Did I miss the subject word of this? Complaints is the subject?
No, this is part of the
complaints?
budget
Okay.
overview.
Right.
Thinking areas of the budget. I'm not thinking, what are we not doing that we need to think about addressing better?
We need
For
responding
which we
to
need to, think
comment.
about a budgetary implication, because adding staff, and adding time is
So
an
there was-
addition to the
there was
budget.
That and the website and the newsletter.
Yeah.
Right.
And I spoke to Janice earlier today too about the website. And it would be helpful for her, and I think for the website management altogether, if we could recreate a committee
Mhm.
to have somebody look at the website from a different perspective. With an eye towards, if you have questions about whatever, is it, how can it be organized so that it's easy to access the information? There's a lot of information there, but it's not always easy to figure out how to get to it.
Right. I
So
think that's a great
I
idea.
was thinking we've got, we have one constituency with a particular interest in this, and that's the CAC. Because of the chart of dealing with easements and promoting them and so forth. And Renee Owens and Margaret Corbett both have some, both interest and expertise that might be good to include a committee to interface with Janice.
Renee already said that she's overworked in that letter, and in her response about, she wanted to put a letter on a big thing in the newsletter.
Yeah,
And her
okay.
response was that she's, between managing her something personal and her animals, and that she's overworked.
Mhm.
She's,
Like
and that was
everybody-
basically said.
Maybe Margaret.
like everybody else we know, right?
Yeah, but
I think if
it
we're
was,
looking at setting up some kind of committee, then we want to, we don't want to sit here and the top of our heads.
right,
We want to think about other people. For example, Sarah has a lot of background
Yeah, for
in
sure.
working with websites, and there's other people in the town as well.
right.
So I think we should look at all of those people who could be
Yeah.
helpful.
I
It could
think
be
it's
helpful
great.
to have somebody who uses,
Yeah,
who
Margaret is
uses it a lot.
a logical one to include.
Yeah. Well, all I was
Corbett, I
suggesting
mean,
was
say Corbett.
that might be those are a couple of people who might be interested, that I haven't spoken to, who could be approached about whether they'd be interested.
Well, and I
But,
think,
maybe it'd be worth putting something in the news, soliciting.
That would be much more useful to make sure we get widespread instead of saying we do it and not let anybody know about it.
yeah,
She has a point.
Mhm.
and I mean, and Janice has worked with, Corbett and Janice have worked together on it, so there is that, but yeah, I mean, I can't look at you. I can't see you because there's a very bright light over
No,
there.
Mhm. There's
So I have to
curtains
go
reaching.
like this. If I'm looking over in your direction and my face isn't reacting to yours it's because I can't see your face. See,
Um,
Oh,
you see it?
yeah, it's
It's like a
reflecting off that
headlight.
picture over there.
From that picture.
Yeah,
Okay. I think it's a great idea and Janice might even have some ideas for that part.
Yeah.
I think we do need to revisit the committee for the website.
Why don't we put a solicitation of interest in the next edition?
Yeah.
I think one of the things we don't want to spend time technically on a system that is changing. We might as well wait and use the new system, not waste people's time.
Well, it's possible that the new system, it doesn't necessarily include the website. The website may not need to be changed, but the system of putting things up on it would be, but we're not even talking about the system, we're talking about the organization. How do people find anything, even just the basic organization of website is the
Yeah.
start place, no matter what the system is.
Mhm.
The
those are-
website doesn't have anything to do with Zoho, so switching from Zoho would have no effect on who's hosting the website or
Right.
in what platform it's being built and content created.
Right,
I mean, where the content is curated, that might change, but the organization of the website doesn't necessarily follow.
I
So,
mean, there are possibilities of other options, but it would be no matter what it is, organization and what goes on it,
Yeah,
how
right.
accessible.
plus, if we're gonna be
Cross-border.
soliciting interest and then making appointment, we're talking, gonna take a, not gonna happen tomorrow anyway.
Right.
So, by the time we get committee together, there'll be something to work with. But I think that's a good start, a good suggestion, a way to go about it. I just want to think those are two things that I sort of pulled out as areas where we might want to think about that are sort of outside of the ordinary process of the budget review, where you're looking at people, well, what do you need to maintain your effort? We could talk in terms of whether we want to set it as kind of a goal or how much of the percent increase in the levy we're willing to tolerate. The legislature, county legislature does this, where they set a target. And then they try to generate a budget that conforms.
like every year.
It appears to me what would be useful, if we're talking about this in the budget, that we need to start setting a schedule of when we're going to have meetings to talk about the budget. And then we have the budget in front of us instead of looking at, don't remember what we're talking about.
Mhm.
So last time we started kind of late, so we should probably start sooner than we did last year.
Well, we
Might
did
be in August, it might be good to have the first meeting. If Laura's sending things out, we might have some, Laura, when do things come back?
Well, I'm going to, my target is to get these packets out to the department heads by the end of next week. It should be able to happen. I've got things pretty together. So is to be able to do that. So we need to give a deadline for the department heads to submit some things, to submit, make a submission so that we can put some figures together. So we can put some numbers together to see where we're at. And then highlight some of these different areas, like you're talking about the website, like you're talking about, getting someone into enforcement, and then maybe highlight some of those additional things that you want to do. But it'll show you by just putting in the budget that people submit. It'll show you right where it stands. And exactly as Joel, you were saying, at that point where we stand as far as percentage of increase in that levy. That's going to change dramatically. It's just at the starting process. So it's putting in some things and getting a ground level, getting a base for everybody to work from. So
Could we meet, probably meet early September then, I would say, the first meeting.
So I can give you dates. The annual budget estimates form from the budget officer is supposed to be distributed by the end of August. And by September 19th, the annual budget estimates are due back to the budget officer.
And
Yeah,
that would, that would be
talking
great
about-
though, if we could do it before that. Thanks, Janice. Yeah, though
I mean,
they
that's
do have some guidelines for us, but if we could get it even before that, that would be great. It would be
That's what
nice
I'm
to get back, to get these back in August.
Right.
Maybe beginning of the 4th week even, or middle of the 3rd week to get something back. Doesn't mean it can't be changed, you know.
No, of course.
but
I mean,
get
you just
something
should-
back.
Yeah,
And
So
then
that-
would it be reasonable to start having board meetings the early in September?
yeah, right, extra meetings.
Oh, I think so.
Yes, yes.
Oh, I definitely think so. I definitely think that that would be a great time to start.
So
Instead
maybe
of
the
waiting
first-
till into October, we could get it going in
Yeah,
September.
right,
Give more time to highlight these issues that you're talking
right,
about.
right. Yeah, we started pretty late last year, so it seems to me,
Actually,
Um,
last year we started in August.
yeah,
Like I
not,
said, it
not
wasn't really
ser-
late.
not
We followed the
seriously.
budget calendar, but it felt kind of rushed toward the end.
We
did-
started meetings in August. We started extra budget meetings in August.
We
Mhm.
didn't do very many details at the beginning. We need to be more serious this year.
Yeah, well, you know, the other thing we need, of course, is the organizations that we support
Yeah.
have to be told that they need to make their.
Laura is sending that information out. She
She's
just said
sending
she's
it-
sending out and
She
she
said
wants
for
to get it
departments,
back.
Not
That's what
for,
department heads,
not for, you know,
organizations.
like the seniors and other,
Right, right, the organizations that we support
yeah, we need to get them. in
Yes,
soon.
yes.
need to be also told that.
Laura, do you send those out to those people as well?
Yes, in the past, we have done that. Last year, we were kind of trying to figure out who was in charge of what. And we were, you know, juggling things around, but I would like to send out a packet of where, you know, the seniors stand with the list of all of the different things they've had, like the senior citizens, the food pantry. What other ones are we thinking of?
Community association.
Community council, you know, what has happened with the community council, what's happened year to date so far, what were the totals for last year, so that there's a full year in there. You know, just enough information for people to just really be able to look at that and sort of size things up. But I will put together packets for all of those different organizations.
That's great. That's
And
great.
as far
Yeah.
as some of the other ones that we do get contracts for, and we do have them under that caption, other government support, we can get down into detail with that and then at least start reaching out to get those contracts. It doesn't seem possible that it's time to get those contracts again, is it?
Yes.
You know, that includes your youth services and community science institute.
Yes,
and-
absolutely. I mean, it doesn't seem possible. It seems like we just got them all. Now it's time again. So
In fact, some of these haven't even been finalized yet, but,
Okay.
yeah.
and it's
Uh,
given me more time too to reach out, you know, to get some ideas about PERMA, get other ideas about, you know, some potential increases in, you know, liability insurance, what those kinds of things, and you get some of those estimates in, so we can get
Yeah.
close.
But,
and
yeah,
the
the big
time-
liability insurance, health insurance.
Yes, we know the health insurance increase. I believe they're having. Last I heard it was going to be 8%, but maybe they've come down to about 6%. Somewhere between 6% and 8% increase in the health insurance premiums this year.
And that's a big number, because it's a big number.
Health
The other
insurance-
one,
Always a big number, that's for sure.
yeah. The union contract has the percent increases for the next 3 years in it. That contract has yet to be signed.
I haven't seen the final one. Have you, Joel?
Well, I mean, I sent Stephanie Engster, who's the union rep, what I believe to be what we agreed to. And I sent her a reminder just a couple of days ago that we still haven't signed it. We've we're acting as if it was already in place, you know, but it hasn't been finalized yet. But anyway, in that contract, it provides for 3% increase and traditionally, typically, except for adjustments like we just made for hiring the planner at a different rate,
Right.
the expectation is that we would do the same percent. Unless we have an adjustment, you know, for a position. The county is in the position that, in the city also, of having discovered when they go out to hire people, when people retire or leave for whatever reason, that, you know, these annual small percentage increases have resulted in them not being competitive anymore, because other places have been, you know,
Oh, yeah,
negotiating and getting much higher salary, which is what we just ran into with the planner.
right,
Right.
right.
You know, 2 years ago, when we hired David, we were the highest paying municipality in the county for their planner. That's no longer the case.
In 2 years.
In 2 years, exactly. There was a bit of sticker shock in the city when they discovered what they're going to have to pay for city manager. Oh my God. Wow. So we ought to be willing to consider adjusting some of our salaries.
I would highly encourage you to revisit the town clerk salary. It's severely underpaid,
It could certainly
particularly when you continue to pile on more tasks for the town clerk that, you know,
Yeah, I mean, the clerk is an evolving position with ever expanding responsibility. Well, if it becomes an appointed position, which I hope it will, then there'll be expectations of how much time is devoted to the office. And compensation ought to be certainly revisited, because at a full-time, if it's treated as a full-time position, it is severely underpaid. So that's all to get us into the budget process, which is, I think you're perfectly right to want to get started soon.
First week in September, we should have our first one.
So we need to get the word out to our sponsored organization.
Laura has said she's already taken care of that,
Yeah, but you have to give them time to do something.
and that's what she's doing. She's already said what her time frame is. She's
Joel
first of
just-
September. is
He's
fine.
just saying.
He's repeating it.
And I'm repeating, I'm making note of it. One thing for a department head to say, I'm fine, I'll respond in 2 weeks. If you send somebody like this, the Danby seniors or Community Park Association, notice that they need to get their budget proposal submitted, they'll do it at their next meeting, which may or may not be between now and.
Right, or maybe they'll have to have an extra meeting.
Yeah, they might,
Right.
but we'll have to.
Everybody to have
basically,
an
you know,
extra meeting.
get the word out that we need your request,
All right,
so that we can plug it into the budget. Okay. Do we want to spend any time on the wish list?
When we're talking about the budget. Community center.
Yes.
I mean,
I spent a little bit of time on it this afternoon, putting this notes in from what we had talked about the last time we talked about it a couple of weeks ago already.
you did?
And then,
It would be
How could
helpful if we
not-
could have that ahead of time so we can look at it rather than just do it at, and we're at 2 hours.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's why I'm asking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, did you make that available? Like,
Yeah, because it's in workplace. You know, when I make changes, it changes the document, so the
Oh.
wish list that's there, the change, I changed it from you know, I forget what it said
Okay,
before,
I'll
June
go-
twenty
I'll look.
twenty-three
I
to
tried
August
to-
twenty
I tried to
twenty-three.
go to the, I thought it was linked on the agenda, but it wasn't.
Well, it is actually.
Well, I couldn't open, whatever it was, it came up going,
When I was, yeah.
going,
Well, it might,
oh, or something.
yeah, I mean,
It wasn't, I couldn't open it an hour before the meeting.
that's interesting. It didn't get linked, it didn't get linked until today, which is not unusual for things to get linked. Of course, the document exists. Well,
I'll try it again, but I couldn't open it.
yeah, but to be fair, I mean, I made a couple of additions this afternoon. So, you know, but they're at the bottom of the list, you know, in the other category. And the other ones were just updates to include what we had talked about before, just so that they noted it. And I dropped off a couple of things that we've accomplished, so don't need them anymore.
Maybe it was when he was changing. it.
Yeah, it's just open just now, but.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Would you,
Okay,
For instance, I mean, I added, you know, passing the noise law and adding short-term rental regulations.
I thought we added that. I brought that up at the last,
Well,
I added that, I brought that up at the last meeting.
at the last meeting, you added the site plan review for
That,
farm retail businesses, and I put that on.
well, I also said, what about these other things, you know?
Well, whether
Okay.
you did or not, I thought it was appropriate, so
Ah,
that's
okay.
on. So we could talk about them, but
Right.
it doesn't have to be tonight.
Right,
We do have, you know, in the back of my mind is that we have not yet identified how we're gonna use our ARPA money.
right.
And we can't just say, well, you know, eventually we'll deal with that issue. One of
Well,
the
we
things,
we should figure that out. We should
Yeah.
do that.
and we've crossed out some of the things we probably won't use it for.
Right,
Catherine was gonna look at contacting the internet service providers about extending their lines and what that might look like.
yeah.
Kevin said he knows, the Hastely guy,
Um,
yeah.
Yeah. Did it?
Huh.
Okay. All right, so we can come back to it.
Cool.
I don't know if the next meeting, because that one's gonna be pretty busy. Especially if I'm successful in getting the consultant to commit to coming to.
That would be really nice.
Source code.
That would be
That
really
would-
nice. Yeah,
Would be nice. I'll try.
I mean, we could plan on having we're already starting early, right?
Yeah.
I was gonna say we could plan on having, you know, an extra half hour, but at the end, if we need to.
Yeah. Okay, items for next time. We hope, yeah. Would include that maybe, sort of, you know,
That would be nice. The noise and short-term rental, maybe we'll have some work on that.
I'm not holding out that we'll have much on noise.
Well, even
In
just,
2
even
weeks.
just, we had a meeting, you know, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
but, it is only 2 weeks, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah,
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 well, it's just a little over 2 weeks, right? 2.5. Next meeting is the 16th, today's the 1st. Just a little over 2 weeks away. And it's already August.
yeah. Well, maybe we could,
My son's coming, I've not seen him in years, and he's gonna be here all next week, and I'm gonna do as little as possible.
oh, good,
Mhm.
good,
Yeah,
yeah.
like no CAC meeting for me.
No, that's good note. All right, there will be other things, of course.
The wish list, maybe we could spend more time on that if we have nothing else come up.
Well, and even if we do,
Well, we might have to have a report on the big barbecue
events, I know.
event.
you know, follow
Yeah, we
This
want.
sounds like a Danby Woodstock. Danby Woodstock.
Yeah.
up. Yeah, it's time-
Well, even, I was thinking about that,
We
but
should get a
even
cut.
for that Woodstock, they had, even though it was a little shady way they got it, they did have a permit from the town to do Woodstock. Because the motel guy got a permit for a concert.
Yeah.
It just wasn't discussed exactly, but there's nothing that we've heard of any kind of permit for this,
Yeah, nobody talked to anybody about anything.
right?
Well, it's sort of interesting.
Yeah.
We could put Danby on the map here with, you know, the next,
Yeah, I'm sure that's what's gonna happen.
the next grassroots kind of thing.
Well,
But we need to provide for it if so, and we do not
right.
currently provision for it.
And it may not be a very good location on a two-lane road with no berm, no road parking.
Right there is not a good spot. I mean,
Well, how is,
that road is-
how's Agag Road in Newburgh, is that? That's where they did it last.
I mean,
They might have had big
Flat.
fields available.
yeah, it's flat.
Yeah.
I mean, Grassroots used to have a parking lot on Haggard Road, didn't they?
Is it?
I think. And have a shuttle bus, I'm pretty sure, anyway,
Yeah. It's a lot flatter way than it is in Danby,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
yeah.
On the other hand, we might have natural amphitheater kind of situation here in Danby because of the-
And somebody had a wedding or some huge event on Danby Road, maybe 2 months ago. Behind those beautiful old houses, they're just past Steam Mill Road. I mean, when we went to a friend's house in Owego and there was like, I was like, what's going on there? Because there were more cars around and
Yeah.
parked on the road, and then when we came back, there were buses, like, like at least two. One was huge and the other was a little smaller. So they must have bussed people in. You know, which is something
They could
these
do.
guys should be
That's
they
right.
could do
They
it,
could
you
do
know?
that.
Yeah.
Park at Wegmans and bus them in.
Yeah.
I don't know. But anyway,
Yeah.
but the noise just, you know, it sounded like it was in our backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anything over there, that's weird. But
Well, it's
Yep.
what is it? 5,
Okay.
6. It's,
Meeting adjourned.
mhm.
Thank you all for coming.
So Ted,
Take care, everybody.
how's your eye?
Since you
Let's
asked,
see.
let's see, I'll just give you a view. Basically,
I was thinking, wait a minute,
It's
I have to
pretty
get back
cleaned
to
up.
my Zoom.
it's
Looks
pretty
a lot
cleaned up.
better.
The,
What happened?
that is not much worse than this.
Right.
Actually, Laurie, passed this one around the highway department. I fainted basically and took a face plant on one of Danby's tar and gravel roads.
Oh,
And
no.
couple stitches, bruises, and the most monumental black eye I have ever had. It's the only black eye I've ever had. No problem.
Where,
The road was good and
anybody
sharp.
around? You know, were you alone? Were you?
No, actually, I was talking to a neighbor and she went home, got me water and towels, and then 2 more neighbors pulled up and stopped to help, and they all convinced me that I really ought to go have it looked at in the hospital, in short.
Here.
It worked. It worked.
Yeah.
It's an experience.
Glad you're all right, though.
Yeah, no, yeah, me too. And by the way, tell Keith, thank you. And I think it's going to look great when he's finished.
I'll tell him.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, enough of that. Let's see, who's still the meeting owner here?
who I?
Oh,
There's a few of us, but I'm gonna end it.
yeah, thank
Bye.
you. Interesting meeting.
All right, well,